Welcome to Courageous Conviction. Remember that Jeff and I record each Saturday 5 episodes. So please hit the like button, subscribe so you catch all 5 episodes. We usually start out with one theme or topic. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes to really understand it. Some things are more sensitive than others right now, what's going on in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe, and let's jump into this video.
You're right. Yesterday, and this point in case, let me just bring this up because you didn't know about this. I work for a big company. I don't want to put the name out here. Showed up. We sell packaging, and so we showed up to a couple of different places that were selling cannabis, right? And they produce it. They start out from the little gummies and everything else. They have to start out with extracting the oil and all that. So we walked into these laboratories, and these are huge outfits. They're not marked outside. You don't see that, there's no big cannabis thing going on like you see, those storefronts all over the place now. There's a street, on every street corner, there's a cannabis shop. But this is like a huge operation, and everybody in these places, we're talking high dollar. This is sophisticated stuff. They've got dispenser, machines that, each machine is 100 plus, a couple $100,000 at least. We're probably talking into the millions just for those packaging machines that do automation. And everybody that works these machines are Mexican nationals. And it's just the way it is. They've probably been here for a while. And the first thing that came to my mind is, where are they getting this funding? Because this is all cash kind of stuff, so it's coming from the cartels, my guess. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I can't say for a fact what you saw was that actually with the cartel, but I can say this, that it is the reality that the cartels are moving through the legal system. They are actually pumping through that system and feeding into that system, right?
It totally makes sense, but maybe somebody have to follow the money and find out what's going on. But we're talking money. We're talking huge. We're talking warehouse. We're pulling trucks back and forth, and this is all a legal operation.
Well, and here's something I you've got now, Jeff, and like we were talking about the crime that's coming across, the illegal issue, right? And you've got squatting now. And you saw the Venezuelan last week who put that video on TikTok saying that, hey, come here, you can just take any Americans home as long as they're not there, and you can take their home. Come take the gringos homes.
I got a solution for that, so we come up with our own posses, and it's not legal, but we'll make it legal, because the thing is if they can do that, then we're going to play the same dirtiness.
Well, but now let's go back to what's bringing them here. Okay. We're talking about the problem of them coming, but you asked me, what do we do with this? How do we solve it? How do we solve it? One is, I hope that we can get out to the voting block this November and solve that issue, right? Yeah. And that's where it's coming from, because the message they're getting. I talked to a lot of people in Latin America this last week, and like I told you, I asked the questions. I said, hey, I want to ask you something. And these guys are friends of mine. I said, what's your feeling on guns, right?
Yeah.
And all of them were like, oh, well, that's not really something that's my thing. I don't really care for that. Yeah. That's the military or someone with the police. And then one even said to me, well, as long as the government felt I was fit to have a gun, I would like to have one for self-defense. My response was, the moment the government sees you're fit to have a gun, you already don't have gun rights. If you have to rely on the government to give you your gun and control your gun rights, that is not a gun right. That's a gun privilege. That's very different. And they can take that right away because anytime they deem it necessary, right?
And that's where they get into that gray area. They want to make it into a gun privilege instead of a gun right. And they're trying to blur that kind of thing to say, okay, they're pretty much the same thing. What's the big deal? We're just being, common sense gun rights. I'm like, well, that's not common sense gun rights. It's you changing the vocabulary so it becomes less of a right, more of a privilege, and more of a opposition or an opportunity for the government to take control of our guns.
Yeah, exactly right.
And not to sound like some, I'm no gun nut. I've got a couple. But the thing is that just like I talked to all my friends that actually I don't have an AR-15, but the ones that, and if I did, I wouldn't say it. The ones that do, that talk to me, they're like, hey, if they show up to my door and ask for my AR-15 that I bought, 6 years ago, I'm going to say, hey, I sold it. You got a bill of sale? It's not a legal requirement, so no, I don't. I can't remember that guy. So that's the way it goes. So you can't hold me against it. You can't come into my house. You can't come looking for it. I can just tell you no.
Well,
So far, that's the case.
So far, but states are now starting to say, like in California, if you sell a gun to anybody, you have to do background check. It have to be registered. They passed laws here, I think, in January. I don't know if it went in effect or not, or if they're trying to get in effect. I think it did go in effect, like in California, for example, right?
Right.
And I don't know how New York. I was sure New York and Illinois is just an outright ban, for anything that's assault weapon, and anything's assault weapon in New York, in Illinois, could be anything that they consider a pistol that can assault somebody.
Yeah, anything is a semi-automatic.
Well, you know where it goes from here.
Has more than a couple of rounds.
Do you know where it goes from here? Because I've watched this happen. I watched this happen now in Latin America. Where it goes from here is next. It's knives, right? Then anything that's big, it has to be shortened down. Nothing over 6-inch blade, like in Ecuador. If you had any over 6-inch blade, that was a weapon, right? And you go to prison for that, for having a knife with you. And then it comes down to even shotgun shells. And I know a guy who went down into Peru, bought himself 6 boxes of shotgun shells to come home so he could have his shotgun. Lived out in the middle of the jungle. The military caught him because they're the ones that patrol the jungle. Caught him. He's in prison. He's in prison for like 6-7 years for having shotgun shells in possession. That's where it goes, right? And yet here's the funny thing. Not even 9 months ago, Ecuador renewed their gun rights because the crime got out of control from all the illegal Venezuelans and the immigration coming across the border. Right.
Well, see, that's my point. Even the Latins here that don't really love guns because they've seen violence, not like we've seen here. But you look at like Guatemala in the inner cities where gun rights have been reestablished and people that don't have criminal backgrounds can go in and buy a gun, and then they form posses to protect and patrol their own neighborhoods, which they do because the police aren't willing to go into those neighborhoods because they're too bad. And they've cleaned up their areas. This is, so people that have had, inner city areas in Guatemala City, for example, where bus drivers are getting shot out of retaliation because they're not paying, the owners of the buses aren't paying bribes or extortion fees. Then what happens with these groups of people is they go back and they push back against the Maras, which that's the Mara, criminal organization that is in Guatemala. So I mean, and that's really what it comes down to.
Well, look at what happened in New York.
That's why I love Latins that love guns. I mean, yeah, that guy in New York that killed that.
I thank you for being with us on Courageous Conviction. Remember, there's 5 episodes each week that we put out. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes, so stay with us. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's episode on Courageous Conviction.